up on the field on Sunday, I'm not really worried about whatever I'm going through. I'm a football player, and these things happen, and you got to play through injuries. You got to play through things, and I embraced that last season. I'm looking forward to having a season where I can actually, be out there practicing more, not worry about nursing an injury, and be able to take the field on Sunday with a clear head and just going out there and make plays.
I know you and O were really looking forward to last year. You guys still went over 1,000 yards each despite not being yourselves. How much are you looking forward to that time when you guys are both at 100% and the potential that that can bring?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely been looking forward to it. It's something that gives us the opportunity to, have opportunities to make more plays, win more games, um, um, and that's what we're looking to do here this season.
Hey, Jarvis, do you see a big difference in Odell from a year ago, given his coming off surgery?
Yeah, absolutely. I think being able to have the confidence that a guy like he has, and to be able to come out here each and every day and use his gifts, and not feel hindered or not feel restricted by anything that might be going on with his body. So it's good to see him out here making plays, dominating. That's really what I see from him so far.
Good morning, Jarvis. This is now the third head coach that you are starting a season with here in Cleveland. What in this regime makes you feel good or makes you feel like, despite this bizarre offseason, okay, we really truly are ready and I feel good about what we have?
Yeah, I mean, everybody that's in this building love football, and I think that the stress and the emphasis has been on the details and about the game and about what we can do to be a better football team. And I'm brought in. I think whoever is leading us at whatever time, I'm a firm believer of making sure that I'm doing my job, making sure that I'm out here competing, and putting myself in positions to help the team win. And I know that the coaching staff is going to do the same.
And if I could ask one more, as you talk about doing your job, it's sort of a very common idea that you may rely on the run game early, that you may rely on Nick and Kareem. Is that fair? And if so, how does this receiving room feel about blocking a lot?
I mean, first of all, I love to block. That's part of my game. That's part of who I am. And secondly, I think it's just we're gonna do whatever it takes to win. Whether that's running, passing, or whatever it is, whatever it takes to win. I'm all for that.
Hey, Jarvis, when we talked to Baker a little earlier in this off season, he talked about how just watching you and Odell, he felt that you guys, seemed to think that, this is our time. And just wondering, have you guys kind of put your heads together and talked about that, there is a sense of urgency to go out there and make this happen this season and realize some of those dreams?
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly talking. We're constantly growing. We constantly, learning things about the game, trying to figure out what we do well, what we do best. I think that's one of the biggest things for us, just having that open line of communication, being able to talk to each other, being able to have the hard conversations. This is a game that throws a lot of challenges at you, and I think the biggest thing for us is making sure that our communication level is at the point where it doesn't really matter what challenges that we face or the team that we're going against. If we're on the same page, and we should have successful plays.
Do you think do you feel sort of though that, that this year is the year for you guys to put it together and make that run at a championship?
Yeah, I think every guy that's ever played, no matter how many seasons that they've played, they always think that this year is that year. And I wouldn't want anybody in this building that didn't think that as well, or on my previous teams. So I think that that's just the mindset, in every 32 in the 32 clubs that have an opportunity to go out there and play this game. Everybody wants to go and play in the Super Bowl, but you got to do the little things and go week by week with everything, and you'll get there when you get there.
Hey, Jarvis, what are your emotions heading into week one, given there's so much uncertainty, a few months back, if we would even have a football season?
I'm very excited. I'm excited to get the opportunity to take the field, and play the game that I love. And, coming off of the surgery, and having the opportunity to um, get as healthy as I can. Like I said, that's an ongoing process for me right now. But it's a great feeling knowing that we got a game in a couple days.
Did you have those doubts? I mean, when we were in March, April, May, June, were you thinking we might not play?
You know what? I didn't really think about it, honestly. I was in a tough part of my rehab at that point, and my whole focus was just making sure that I would be able to come back if there was a season. And that's where my mindset was. It actually did me a favor. It got me a little bit more time, so which was a good thing. But that's just where my mind was.
Hey Jarvis, when you talk about always learning, what did you learn from last season? What did that season teach you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we constantly see that that your roster or your team on paper, still has to go out there and perform, and that it's an ultimate team game. That it's not going to just be the offensive guys that's making the plays and winning the games. It's going to come down to defense. It's going to come down to special teams. It's going to come down to having every guy, including the coaching staff, every player having great situational awareness, being able to understand where we are in the game, what points we're in, what points we are in the game, whether, we need to go for it on fourth down, etc. I think having those things, be key in our success and our approach is something that, we continue to take and learn from other teams and ourselves.
Hey, Jarvis, obviously all the games are important, but how much value do you place on this one being week one against the defending division champs? And obviously everybody wants to get off to a good start.
Yeah, listen, it's a tough matchup. It's going to be a tough match.
1 minute.
Or who they are, and and they've been that way for a while. So I think for us, we just got to continue to keep our head in the right place. Identify, their strengths and their weaknesses, identify our strengths and weaknesses, and then try to just make one more play than they do.
Hey, Jarvis, after a general lack of direction kind of bogging you guys down for much of last season, how different has it been under Coach Stefanski, and how excited are you to play under him this season?
I'm very excited. I
30.
Just my rehab process and everything that I've been going through as of late, and have the opportunity to just be out here practicing through training camp and through these days leading into a game, is very exciting. And obviously Coach Stefanski, having the opportunity to head coach a game,
Stand by.
and make those calls and be on this level and to give us the direction that we need to go out there and try to win games each and every weekend.
You're up.
He's the best. He's the best. I mean, he's the best. I'm so glad he's on this team. I'm so glad he represents this city, this town, this organization, all of it. Just love him. Let me run this by you, and I'm curious your percentages on this. Do you think it would be accurate to say that Hooper, Beckham, and Landry will catch 80% of the balls thrown this year?
I think that's probably a little high because you're going to have
what
dump-offs
would you
to the
feel
running
comfortable
backs.
with? Sure.
I would probably say I'll go to 66%. I think two out of every three balls that are caught will be to those guys. Could even be up to 70. That trio, because even if you go back and you look at let's say Minnesota last season. So Minnesota last season, your running backs had 70, 80, 95, 98. So running backs had 98 out of 307. So that right there is almost 33%. And then you got to factor in you've got your other receivers that were not the top two, that's 40, another 40, and then not your top tight end, that's another 40. So if your completions that were in let's call it 350, I think you're going to get, between 200 and 230 to Odell, Jarvis, and Hooper.
And it's tough. The problem last year with Minnesota is they had the injuries to Diggs and Thielen, so you didn't have, It's not
apples.
I guess the
to
reason
apples,
I ask is,
but you're going to get the running backs involved. The running backs will catch 3 passes a game easy. Probably
there's no question.
5.
Yeah. So if Baker throws it 28 times a game, let's say, wasn't Cousins right around there, about between 28, high 20s is basically what he was last year, to low 30s was kind of where he ended up.
He was,
I think he
high
had
20s. He was
466.
under.
Their offense had 466 passing attempts last year, if I remember correctly.
Yep. In 15 games, 444. So call it 30 a game. 30 a game.
Right at it. So if 6 are going to Hunt and Chubb, you're at 24 left. You got to figure at least another 3 or 4 go to
20.
Yeah, you're right.
20.
That's true.
Let's call it 20 completions, 22 completions, somewhere in there.
22 of 30, yeah. So if you're 22 of 30, and if Hunt and Chubb catch 2 balls, 3 balls apiece, I mean, you're talking about Jarvis and Odell, you're talking 4 or 5 catches a game. One of them's going to be there. Now, one of them could get 8, but one of them's going to be 4 or 5. The point is there's just not enough to go around for them to have the type of years statistically. Now, I'm not saying that matters to them. I don't think it does. I think they just want to win. And as long as you win, that's not going to be a problem. But you're talking about 3 premier targets in Beckham, Landry, and Hooper, and there's just not a lot of catches to go around. There's about, 15 catches to go between those 3, 16?
One thing I'll say is that I do believe we will run more offensive plays. I think Minnesota's theory was squeeze the football. We've got Dalvin. We had, Diggs for the majority of the season, but we didn't have Thielen for the majority of the season, and our tight ends weren't necessarily Pro Bowl caliber tight ends. They wanted to win with running the ball and good defense. I think the Browns are built slightly differently. I think in Minnesota there were more questions about the offensive weaponry than there were about the defense, whereas I think with us there are more questions on the defensive side of the ball right now than the offense. So it's going to behoove, I think, the Browns to play more up-tempo, generate more plays, get the ball in the hands of their weapons. So if you run just 20% more plays than the Vikings did a year ago, which I think is possible, and all of a sudden 440 attempts goes up to, we'll call it close to 500 attempts, and your completions go up to 340, 350. That right there could be enough where you're getting. Look, Odell, I think only is going to need 6 catches to get to 100 yards a lot of weeks. I think he's going to average 15. I mean, Diggs averaged 18 yards a catch last year in this offense. Yeah. So Hooper could be in the 6 for 60. Jarvis could be in the 6 for 70, 75. Odell could be 6 for 90, and that's 18. And then between that, you have, you hit a Harrison Bryant here, you hit a Njoku here, you hit a Chubb, a Hunt, Janovich, and now you're in the low to mid 20s in terms of let's go. That's right. People walking around there fired up, little buzz in the building finally. But I think if you can get to 24, if you can throw it 36 times a game versus 30. You can get to 24 completions a game pretty easily, and then all of a sudden those numbers become a little bit more palatable.
So probably the team, real quickly, the team that did this as good as anybody recently was Kyle's Atlanta team, which had similar skills guys, sort of, to us. They threw it 530 times. They ran it 430. But just from a total number of plays perspective, most of the teams they're in the same vicinity in terms of total plays that run this system.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I do think tempo will be a very big part of this team, especially with having two stud tailbacks. Coming up next, we hit the matchup. Our offense versus their defense at the bottom of the hour. Jeff Zrebiec joins us. He is the senior writer for the Ravens for The Athletic to get you behind enemy lines. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Yep. Welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily. Beau Bishop here for Raising Cane's, opening this month in North Olmsted on Brook Park Road, right behind Great Northern Mall. Raising Cane's looking to grow their crew as well. Currently holding interviews at that North Olmsted location. Apply on site now through September 13th, Monday through Friday, 12 to 6. On Saturday and Sunday, 12 to 4. Interview on site. Get a free Cane's combo box card. Can't make it easy. Text 97211 to apply. Raising Cane's, the home of fresh, never frozen chicken fingers at Raising Cane's. Are all about quality, so they hired the best. Raising Cane's is one love. All right, let's get to the matchup, Z, and this time we're talking about our offense versus their defense.
Yeah, and for us, look, it's going to come down to, I think, our ability to run the football, which is what this team is built to do. That's what they set out to do. It's what they want to do. And you look at, week 4, the win, Nick Chubb, 20 carries, 165 yards, 3 touchdowns. You look at week 16, the loss to Baltimore, Nick Chubb, 15 carries, 45 yards. So when you can run it effectively against this team, obviously you have a chance to do some very good things. Now, again, an excellent defense here were the Baltimore Ravens. Last year, they were the number 4 total defense, the number 3 scoring defense. They were excellent against the run. They were great on third downs, great in the red zone. All the hallmarks, by the way, these are stats after the fact that tell you, yeah, that team was going to be 14-2 last year. I mean, that's just where their numbers lie. Now, if you think about where their shifts have been on defense, I think there have probably been a few more in terms of changing on the defensive side than necessarily the offensive side of the ball. Josh Bynes, the linebacker, Brandon Carr, the corner, Patrick Owasu, the inside linebacker, nose tackle Michael Pierce, safety Earl Thomas, defensive end Chris Wormley, all gone from last year's team. They retained Judon. They retained McPhee. They retained Jimmy Smith as well. But what they're excited about were the additions of Calais Campbell, 5-time Pro Bowler. He's recorded 11 straight seasons with at least 5 sacks, the longest active streak in the NFL. They stole him for a 5th-round pick. I mean, that was part of Jacksonville's fire sale. Calais Campbell is a stud. And then getting Derek Wolfe, I think, was a big move for them as well. He had a career-best 7 sacks a year ago. And then in the draft, you add Patrick Queen. So this is a good defense that I think you could argue got better up front with the additions of Campbell and Wolfe. Linebacker, I think in time they will get better with Patrick Queen for Owasu. And the defensive backfield, I think losing Earl Thomas is a little bit of a downgrade for them based on what, they're going to go with now. Obviously, Earl Thomas was in the plans, as you had talked about before, to be the one who was going to call the defense while they brought Queen along. And so that is definitely a little bit of a change going from him to Deshaun Elliott. And so if I'm the Browns, I want to stress the linebackers, the off-ball linebackers. That is not the strength of this team. L.J. Fort, Patrick Queen, not the strength. Stress the safeties. Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott, not the strength. The corners, Humphrey and Peters, Jimmy Smith, that's the strength of this team. Up front, you've got Campbell, you've got Pernell McPhee, you've got Judon, and you've got Derek Wolfe, who can all get after the quarterback, the big nose tackle, Brandon Williams in the middle. You've got to stress these linebackers, stress these safeties, because these are probably the best. It's one of the best corner duos in the NFL, if it's not the best.
Yep.
So you got to pound it.
That's
you
how you do
pound it. And use
now
the
good news
ends.
is, the good news is that everything, and this is when we're talking about the roadmap. Everything you did this offseason offensively ought to help you on Sunday, because what did you do? Well, you got better at tackles. You got Conklin, you got Wills at tackle. That's an improvement. You ought to be able to run the ball with those two guys. You're using that big wide zone scheme. Well, you got to get better at tight end. Okay, Austin Hooper, come on down. Let's add him. All of a sudden, let's actually throw to the tight ends. You have Harrison Bryant now in the mix. You have David Njoku in the mix. Now you have 3 tight ends. And we heard from Alex Van Pelt earlier today say that you will see quite a bit of 3. You could see some 3 tight end sets in the game on Sunday. Here's the other thing you got going for you. You want to stress those off-ball linebackers, those safeties. Run it right at them. Well, you got 2 that can do it. So those things are in your favor as well. And the other thing you have going for you is you have an offense that is fit for Baker's skill set. And I think those are the things that you have going for you. And the play-action game, of which he is very, very good at, is set up for him, and it should be set up for him this weekend. And if they get that game going based off of their ability to run the football, which I think they ought to be able to run the football on this team. Tennessee ran it all over them last year. Yep. I realize it's some different personnel, but Tennessee ran it all over against them. We ran it all over against them when we beat them, so they can be rushed on. We have the ability to do that. That's the roadmap. Run right at them.
run it at them, and you go back to the time that when we beat them, it was 30 attempts for Mayfield, 29 rushes for the Browns, 20 for 165 and 3 for Nick Chubb. Ricky Seals-Jones, the tight end, 3 catches, 82 yards, and a touchdown. And I think this offense is built to stress linebackers and safeties. On Browns Live tonight with Joe Thomas at 6:30, we go in the film room and we show you a 2-play sequence from Minnesota last year against the Giants. Play 1 is a wide zone. Play 2 is the exact same look, exact same wide zone look, and the play action off of it, and you just see linebackers and safeties getting confused. Queen has not played with any of these guys. On the safety position, Deshaun Elliott comes in without the experience that Earl Thomas brings. And so if we can establish that run, the play action, as you mentioned, which suits Baker so well, becomes even more effective, and you're going to be able to get receivers running across the field through zones, Hooper getting down the seam, Harrison Bryant, Njoku, etc. That's how this week we can take it to them. We need to know, and one thing I feel 100% confident about with Kevin Stefanski is that every week we will try to minimize the strengths of the opponent's defense and accentuate their weaknesses. Their strengths are going to be their front, and it's going to be the corners. The weakness is going to be the middle of the field with the linebacking core and the safeties. And so how do you stress those guys? Well, the good news is the wide zone stresses them and also wears out that good front, and it allows you then with the play action to create confusion and missteps. And so that's what you're going to do. You're going to try to get after this football team, establish the run early, which is why it's important, A, to either get out to a quick start, but B, not let them get out to a big lead, so that you can work and establish that ground game and the play action. And I think if you're the Browns, the names that you have circled right now are Patrick Queen, L.J. Fort, Deshaun Elliott, and Chuck Clark. And that's who you are going to try to put in difficult positions to take advantage. You also have Jacob Phillips here, who knows a lot about Patrick Queen, played next to him all year last year at LSU, knows his tendencies, knows the way he thinks about approaching the game, and perhaps some of that inside information into the mind of Patrick Queen can end up being helpful in what you're trying to set him up to do.
There's no question. The other big thing that you have going for you, and Baker was one of the best in the league last year in the first 15 plays. But then it got dicey, and that is a lot of because what was happening offensively for us. We will be running an offense this year. It will not be 15 plays and then let's see what happens from there. It will be an offense that goes over the course of the entire game that's set up to take advantage of another team's weaknesses. You will not abandon that after 10, 15 plays. It'll be who you are, and that is going to be a big advantage for this team. Does not lessen the challenge that you face on Sunday in Baltimore. It's a big one. There's no question about it. For some perspective, we will go behind enemy lines next. Jeff Drebeck joining us. He is a senior staff writer for the Ravens, covering the Ravens for The Athletic. He joins us next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If an auto or motorcycle accident caused you injury, call the injury lawyers at 1-800-ELK-OHIO for a free case review. Elk & Elk is a proud partner of the Cleveland Browns. Go Browns. And with that, we head out on the hotline and joined by our great friend Jeff Strebeck, senior staff writer covering the Ravens for The Athletic. Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time, and let's just dig in on this Ravens team, which is 14-2 from a year ago, which set records from a rushing standpoint historically, offensively. We just have never seen anything like it. And then they add to it. What's your feel on this team as they break camp and heading into the opener?
Yeah, I given the nature of the off season and the abbreviated training camp, I don't know that any of us know a whole lot about the particular team we cover, just because there's so many unknowns right now, and you wonder how all this is going to affect certain teams and the reduced practice time. But I think the Ravens are feeling pretty good about themselves. They bring back most of their offense. The guy that they did lose, their perennial Pro Bowl right guard, Marshall Yanda, possible Hall of Famer. He's a huge loss, and there's still some uncertainty there in the interior of the offensive line. But otherwise, offensively, they should be all set. And then defensively, they've pretty much overhauled their defensive front seven. Signing trading for Calais Campbell, signing Derek Wolfe, drafting Patrick Queen and Malik Harrison. So in a lot of ways, on the offense, they're going to be very similar to the group we saw last year, and then their defense, the front seven's completely overhauled. So it'll be interesting how all that meshes together. I don't think the Ravens are going to have it as easy as they did last year. I'm not saying it came easy to them, but you know what I mean. They sort of everything went their way last year, but there's no reason not to think this team isn't capable of having another good year and getting to the playoffs.
Jeff, you talked about this offense that brings back the majority of the same guys, adding the weapon of J.K. Dobbins. What will be the evolution of this offense? I've heard a lot about Hollywood Brown and how he's looked. Where do you see this offense evolving this year, and who kind of maybe will play a bigger role than perhaps they did a year ago?
Yeah, you think it's tough because you don't want to tinker too much with what worked, and they led the league in scoring last year and set all sorts of team and even a league record. But I think they recognize that, the more teams see it, the better, teams have an off season. It kind of adds some personnel that makes it a bit tougher matchup for them and all that. I think they knew they have to evolve a little bit as an offense, and how they would like to do that is to challenge more areas of the field. With Lamar Jackson, he loves to throw to his tight ends up the middle, and there's some short stuff, but there wasn't a whole lot of really big plays downfield in the passing game. And Lamar Jackson did throw a ton outside the numbers, and that's what they want to get at. They want to challenge defenses on other areas of the field. So I think if it's working, obviously it's still going to start with the run, but they'd like to take more shots and work the outside of the field a little more. A guy like Miles Boykin, a third-round pick last year, flashed a few times as a rookie, but didn't seem ready. He's starting, so he'll be a bigger part of the offense. And I think you mentioned Dobbins. He's going to have a role immediately. But they're really hoping Marquise Brown becomes that number one receiver that they haven't really had here for a bit, as in terms of a guy, a young guy that they've developed. And he's looked the part so far. He's bigger, he's stronger, and playing with a whole lot more confidence. So we shall see. But they have the weapons there to be a very productive offense. It's probably the offensive line above all things when you look at the offense that, there's some questions about.
Jeff, a guy that we're very familiar with, obviously, here watching Ohio State is J.K. Dobbins, who had the quietest 2,000-yard season, I think, in the history of college football a year ago, and was just dynamic. Obviously, they have a ton of running back talent there, and I heard Martin the other day talk about 3 guys running it from the running back position. What role will Dobbins fill on this team, and how big of an impact do you think he will have?
Yeah, I think he's a guy that will get more and more touches as the season goes on. This week one, just talking about week one, one of their 3 backs that they have returning, Justice Hill, looks like he won't play. He's dealing with a hamstring, so it looks like it'll be, Ingram as the undisputed starter, and then you have Gus Edwards, who, in 2 Ingram's the undisputed starter, but Dobbins will get his touches, and he'll sort of combine with Gus Edwards. Now, we'll see who's the first person off the bench. I think that'll depend on the situation. But they have every bit, intention of, getting Dobbins involved. You obviously know how he can run and all that. But what impressed me a lot this offseason was how well he was doing in the passing game. He made a lot of circus catches, that you don't see necessarily from certain backs. So I think they're going to find ways to get him the ball in his hands. I don't know that he'll have this dynamic role early necessarily, but he's a guy that'll get more and more touches as he gets more and more comfortable with the offense.
I want to turn your attention to the defensive side. I think that, as you mentioned, the defensive front, you bring in Campbell, you bring in Wolf coming off career-high 7 sacks, you retain McPhee, Judon, Brandon Williams. Very good up on the front. Your corners, Humphrey, Peters, Jimmy Smith, that's probably the best trio in the NFL, certainly the best duo. But there are some questions in the middle. Your off-ball linebackers, Queen, a rookie, first-round pick, high hopes for him. Harrison, a rookie. L.J. Fort's really never been a full-time starter. And then at safety, Deshaun Elliott, 41 career snaps on defense, and Chuck Clark really's only been a starter for 1 year. Is that the area, that middle of the field, the linebackers, off-ball linebackers, and the safeties, that if there is potentially an unknown or a concern about this team, is that where it lies on this defense?
Yeah, you made a great point. I think the other area too you have to pay a little attention to is there's some concern about their edge rush other than Matthew Judon. Now, Judon's a 9.5, 10-sack guy playing under franchise tag. They're not worried about him, but where's the other side? Where's the pass rush going to come from the other side? But they do have some veterans there, so they should be okay. But you just don't know how some of these young guys are going to react. Chuck Clark became their defensive signal caller last year when Tony Jefferson went down, and their defense started playing better immediately, and he had a lot to do with that. So I think they feel like he's going to be solid. They're not worried about him, but you just don't know what you're going to get with Elliott. He's, I think, played 6 games in 2 years. He's just been injured a lot, and he looks the part in practice. Big hitter, fast, has some range, but he's just never stayed healthy, and he's also an emotional guy. So you wonder, having this frontline role now, what will that do? How ready will he be for it? Is he kind of a guy that may get too excited and you can kind of take advantage of in some areas? And then, as you said, the inside linebackers, Patrick Queen's going to be a very good linebacker in this league, first-round pick, but again, he wasn't even starting at LSU at this time last year. He didn't become a starter in college until his final year there, several games into the season. So he's not played a ton of football, and we all know that middle linebacker is a glamour position in Baltimore. They've had the guys. They're hoping he's the next, but to expect that he's just going to, step right in and not make his share of mistakes, that's probably a little optimistic. So they're prepared to deal with some issues with some of these guys. They know they're going to have their growing pains a little bit, but all these guys play fast. They're physical guys, and their defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, always says, we're fine with you making a mistake if you're doing it at full speed. As long as these guys, they bring a little more of a speed dynamic than they've had. So as long as these guys are playing fast, I think they're going to have to live with some of the mistakes that are kind of inevitable when you're playing inexperienced young players.
Jeff, it seems crazy that there would be, from our perspective, that there would be pressure on anybody over there based on 14-2 in the year they had last year. But from a national perspective, you do hear that it's really important that this team gets to the AFC Championship game, that they get those playoff wins. Is that tangible over there?
Well, yeah, just because, this is not, they had such, when I guess in Harbaugh's, what was it, his first 8 years, I think now, maybe it wasn't 8, maybe it's 4, 5, or 6, I think. But in his first 5 or 6 years, not only did they make the playoffs, they won a game in the playoffs and at least advanced. And I think it kind of looms for everybody here, those last 2 playoff flameouts in the first round. Now, 2 years ago, okay, the Chargers may have been a better team. Chargers had a better record. They just happened not to win their division, so they had to come to Baltimore. But again, the Ravens were starting a rookie quarterback with like 8 career starts. That one, whatever. But how that ended last year, they were clearly the best team during the regular season, and they just got completely dominated in every phase on their home field. A team that, most people, or plenty of people had going to the Super Bowl last year, and they just didn't show up and got promptly taken out of the playoffs quickly. So I think everyone's aware of that. They're in one of the situations where, the regular season, I don't want to say it doesn't matter because it's hard to get to the playoffs, and you can't just punch your ticket in the playoffs in September. So a lot has to go right still just to make it. But ultimately, their season's not going to be defined on whether they make it. It's going to be whether they're able to make a run. And, you have a rookie quarterback, you have a young quarterback on his rookie deal. There's a ton of Ravens in the next couple of years that are going to need to get paid, that are hitting close to free agency. Ronnie Stanley, Matthew Judon, or Mark Andrews, Orlando Brown, Marlon Humphrey. Then you're going to get to Lamar, Jackson Steele. And there's a sense here that you don't have a lot of time here. Once you have to pay your quarterback, you're going to have to lose a lot of other players. So the window isn't that wide open. You need to strike in the next year or two. And because there's some of their playoff disappointments the last couple of years, I think there is some pressure on them. And they're in one of those situations where making the playoffs is just not going to be good enough.
Yeah, a lot of pressure that comes with that. Expectations bring pressure, no doubt. And, you take a step back and you look at the Ravens, but look at this division. What are your thoughts on this division and how much tougher it's going to be this year than it was last year?
Yeah, I think definitely. And Roethlisberger changes if Roethlisberger's healthy, completely changes the dynamic in Pittsburgh, because we all know their defense is one of the best in the league. The Browns, it's the talent is all there. I think we've been saying that for a while now. But you match their talent position by position. I know they're a little banged up, and I know there's some questions there in the linebacker and safety, or their defensive backfield a little bit with their injuries. But talent by talent, they match up with anybody. I think the coaching will help them this year, an improvement there. And then the Bengals, their wide receiver group is really good. They've one of the best running backs in the league. You have this young quarterback who's going to go through some growing pains, but we all know his talent. I think it's going to be a dogfight. I really do. There's no easy outs. I think that it's a very much improved division, at least on paper. As I said earlier, you never know how this is going to play out with all these, everything that's going on. But on paper, I think you have three teams who can absolutely play with anybody, and then you have one team which, is probably a year or two away. But there's no doubt in my mind the Bengals are capable of surprising some people. You're not just going to be able to show up and expect to win. So it should be an interesting. I don't think it's going to be a runaway like it was last year by any stretch of the imagination. I think that these teams are going to beat each other up a little bit, and would not surprise me if we go into December with three teams vying, to be in the playoffs, regardless of what's going on in the division. I think, there's three teams that you can make a playoff case for, no doubt.
Jeff, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Take care, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Jeff Strebeck with The Athletic covering the Ravens. Lots more to come, so much more to come, including a score. First edition of The Score coming up next. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Help Cleveland students start the school year off strong. Log on now to clevelandbrowns.com/supply drive to make a monetary donation to the Shoes and Clothes for Kids Remote Learning Back to School Drive. Proudly brought to you by Ohio Cat and the Cleveland Browns Foundation. We have football tonight.
Yes. Let's go. We didn't know if this day would come, and yet here it is. And what I like about it is that I'm going to be kept busy leading up to it. We got Browns Live at 6:30 with myself and Joe.
Right.
You and I and the head coach, Kevin Stefanski, on the Kevin Stefanski Show at 7 all along.
That's right.
The University Hospitals Cleveland Browns Radio Network. And that's going to roll us right into the 8 o'clock hour. And then we're going to be you are looking live. We will be looking live at NFL football kicking off about 25 minutes after that. So I can't believe it. I'm so excited. And this game, I think, is going to be spectacular.
I think it's just going to be back and forth, score. And I think beyond just the game itself, which is fascinating, I'm not going to hold either teams to anything that happens tonight because I think the whole month of this season is going to be a big feeling out process.
Totally.
But I am very fascinated to see what the television product looks like and just how they present the game with a stadium that is empty.
I am as well, and I think that we are going to be overjoyed, and I think this is going to be we're going to come out of this saying, oh, yeah, we're back, baby. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it. All right, it's let's do the scores. Houston at Kansas City. Kansas City, a Niner is where I'm at.
Okay, and I've got the hook to bring you back as well. On top of that.
Okay.
So
okay.
In the playoffs last year, the Houston Texans were ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs 24-0.
Yes,
they lost that game 51-31 in one of the most stunning turnarounds. In fact, the Chiefs scored 41 points on 6 straight touchdown drives at one point during this game in the second and third quarter. They'd add another 10 on in the fourth to get to 51. I think it's going to be sloppy. I think it's going to be an offensive shootout. And so my final, I got the Houston Texans 36, Chiefs 47.
Wow. I think it's tons of points, too. I think Kansas City wins. I'm fascinated to see how they go about everything. It's amazing to think that Kansas City, I think 21 to 22 starters, the one that they replaced with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's one of the more dynamic players in college football a year ago, but just was forgotten because of how talented that LSU team was everywhere else and all the pros they had, including the current quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow. I think Kansas City does win the game. I think it's a ton of points. I got Kansas City 45, Houston 38. 38 on Houston.
Listen, for the record,
38.
Beau has been Mr. Thursday night. So let me just say that right now. So if you have to go lean some way, but this could be one of the crazier days. We just don't know. This could be one of the crazier days.
I think the whole scores for the first month is going to be very difficult.
It's going to be tough. I think you're going to have.
Very, very difficult.
Yeah.
You know what else I just realized, knowing you and I now being in different spots? We're going to have be a little better coordination on the scores. Because normally we could just we'd be looking at the same scores.
Correct.
To make
1 minute.
Don't worry,
we're not
boys.
In the same spot right
I'll
now.
take us to where we need to get to tomorrow.
Oh,
all right,
Gibby. Mid-season form.
Look
Week
at who
1
returned.
It's going to be pure joy. It's going to be pure joy.
Oh, God.
Pure joy.
You'll hear from B.J. Goodson. We will get our season predictions in and a Pure Joy Friday edition of the scores. It'll all come back. It is a Football Friday edition, kid.
30.
Give them a little what they want, Z.
You know what you want? Football is back, baby. Let's go.
That's it. Next level coming.